Did you lose your ball of yarn?
Cat angry. You do not want to make the cat angry. I am Puss in Boots. Is it hot in here? Or is it me? Treasure. Hidden for centuries and guarded by giants in a cure will be given riches beyond imagination.
Show him the golden eggs.
No! Please, you have fashion.
Protect me? And who's gonna protect you?
Is it true a cat always lands on...
Fear me if you dare. I hate cats. My thirst for adventure will never be quenched.
You thought Puss in Boots was just a fun animated movie, a broken bar, but what if I told you it's actually one of the darkest, deepest stories DreamWorks has ever made? Welcome to Hidden Real Facts. Puss in Boots is a fun animated adventure comedy movie that came out in 2011. It tells the story of the cool sword-fighting cat we first met in Shrek 2. The movie from 2004. The film was made by DreamWorks Animation. Chris Miller was the director, and Tom Wheeler wrote the story. Antonio Banderas gives the voice of Puss in Boots, and he is joined by Salma Hayek as Kitty Softpaws, Zach Galifianakis as Humpty Dumpty, Billy Bob Thornton and Amy Sedaris as the bad guys Jack and Jill. The movie shows how Puss became the hero we know, long before he ever met Shrek, together with his old friend Humpty Dumpty, a big talking egg, and a clever cat thief named Kitty Softpaws. Puss tries to find 3 magic beans. Those beans can grow a giant beanstalk that leads to a huge castle in the sky. Up there lives a giant goose called the Great Terror that lays golden eggs. 2 dangerous outlaws, Jack and Jill, want the beans and the treasure too, so Puss and his friends have to outsmart them. The idea for the movie started right after Shrek 2 became a big hit in 2004. At first, the plan was to make a smaller movie called Puss in Boots, the story of an ogre killer, and release it straight to DVD in 2008. But in 2006, the studio decided to turn it into a full big-screen movie instead. Chris Miller, who had just directed Shrek the Third, came on board to direct it. The movie had its very first showing on October 16, 2011, in a special event on a huge cruise ship called Allure of the Seas. It then opened in theaters across the United States on October 28, 2011, and was brought to cinemas by Paramount Pictures. Critics really liked the movie and said lots of nice things about it. It also made a ton of money, over $555 million around the world, while costing $130 million to make. Because it was so good, it was even nominated for the Oscar for Best Animated Feature at the 84th Academy Awards. Later, a TV cartoon series called The Adventures of Puss in Boots started in January 2015 and ran for several years. And in 2022, a brand new sequel called Puss in Boots: The Last Wish came out in theaters and became another big hit. Here is the full story of the 2011 Puss in Boots movie, rewritten in very simple, easy, and friendly words. I kept every single detail in the same length, just made it much easier to read. Puss in Boots is a brave, Spanish-speaking cat who walks on 2 legs and always wears his famous little boots. He is on the run from the law because he wants to get his lost honor back. One night in a bar, he hears that the dangerous outlaw couple, Jack and Jill, have the magic beans he has been searching for his whole life. Those beans can grow a giant beanstalk that goes all the way up to a castle in the sky, where a giant goose lays eggs made of pure gold. Puss sneaks into Jack and Jill's hideout to steal the beans, but right when he is about to grab them, another cat, a beautiful, clever thief cat named Kitty Softpaws, jumps in and tries to take them too. Kitty tells Puss she was hired by someone he knows very well, Humpty Alexander Dumpty, a big talking egg who was Puss's best friend when they were little. They both grew up together in an orphanage in the town of San Ricardo. Puss is not happy to see Humpty at first. When they were teenagers, Humpty tricked Puss into helping him rob a bank. The robbery went wrong, Puss got blamed for everything, and he had to run away. Humpty went to jail, and Puss lost his honor and his home. Even though Puss is angry, Humpty talks him into teaming up again. The three of Puss, Kitty, and Humpty decide to steal the beans and go get the golden eggs together. As they travel, Puss and Kitty start to fall in love. Puss also starts to forgive Humpty little by little. They manage to steal the beans from Jack and Jill, plant them in the desert, and the huge beanstalk shoots up into the clouds. The three friends climb the stalk, talking in funny high voices because the air is so thin, and reach the giant's castle in the sky. Once inside, they discover the giant died a long time ago. The only thing still living there is a scary creature called the Great Terror that protects the mother goose and her golden eggs. The eggs are way too heavy to carry, but then they see the cute little golden goose lay tiny golden eggs, so they decide to take the baby goose instead. They grab the goose and escape just in time, then cut down the beanstalk so Jack and Jill can't follow. Everyone is celebrating their success when Jack and Jill suddenly attack. Puss gets knocked out. When he wakes up, he thinks his friends have been kidnapped, so he follows the wagon tracks all the way back to his old town, San Ricardo. There he finds out the truth. The kidnapping was fake. Kitty and Jack and Jill were actually helping Humpty with the big revenge plan against Puss for leaving him behind years ago. The town guards catch Puss and want to throw him in jail. His kind adoptive mother, Imelda, begs him to turn himself in quietly. While Puss is locked up, Humpty rides into town with wagon loads of golden eggs and everyone cheers him as a hero. In prison, Puss meets an old man named Dandy Jack Beanstalk. Yes, the real Jack from the fairy tale. Jack tells Puss that Humpty stole the magic beans from him years earlier when they were in jail together. Even more important, Jack warns Puss that the Great Terror is actually the mother of the little golden goose, a gigantic, angry bird that will destroy anything to get her baby back. Puss suddenly understands. Humpty's real plan was to bring the baby goose to San Ricardo so the huge mother would come and destroy the whole town as payback. Kitty feels bad about the trick, sneaks into the prison, frees Puss, and tells him she really loves him. Together they rush to find Humpty. Puss begs Humpty to do the right thing and help save the town instead of destroying it. Humpty finally listens and agrees to be a hero. They use the little golden goose as bait to lead the giant mother bird away from San Ricardo. During the wild chase, they also stop Jack and Jill from stealing the baby goose for themselves. When they reach a broken bridge outside town, Humpty and the little goose almost fall to their deaths. Puss grabs a rope to save them, but the rope can't hold all three. Humpty chooses to let go and sacrifices himself so Puss and the goose can live. When Humpty hits the ground, his shell breaks open and reveals he was a golden egg inside all along. The Great Terror gently picks up her baby goose and Humpty's golden egg and flies back to the sky, happy again. The town is safe, and everyone now sees Puss as the true hero. He says a loving goodbye to his mother Imelda, but because he is still wanted by the law, he has to run away again. Kitty joins him, playfully steals his boots for a moment, and the two cats ride off together. In the happy ending scenes, we see Jack and Jill in the hospital recovering. Humpty, now a shiny golden egg, happily dancing with the geese up in the clouds, and Puss and Kitty sharing a romantic kiss as they start their new adventures together. The casting dynamics behind Puss in Boots, bringing feline flair to life. When DreamWorks Animation set out to craft the 2011 spin-off film Puss in Boots, the casting process became a pivotal element in transforming a beloved side character from the Shrek franchise into a standalone swashbuckling hero. Antonio Banderas, who had already lent his charismatic voice to Puss in Shrek 2 back in 2004, was the natural choice to anchor the film. His return wasn't just about continuity, it was about evolving the character from a witty, boot-wearing feline sidekick into a complex protagonist grappling with themes of honor, redemption, and friendship. Banderas' Spanish heritage infused Puss with an authentic, lyrical accent that rolled off the tongue like a flamenco dancer's heels, complete with drilled Rs and exaggerated chest puffing during sword fights. Directors and producers at DreamWorks knew from the outset that without Banderas, the film's hearted vain yet vulnerable cat seeking to reclaim his glory would falter. His performance was described in early production notes as an irresistible central force, blending comic timing with emotional depth that made audiences root for this anthropomorphic outlaw. Banderas' casting journey for the original Shrek 2 had been a serendipitous match. DreamWorks sought a voice that could capture the essence of the fairy tale cat from Charles Perrault's classic tale, but with a modern, Zorro-like swagger. Banderas, fresh off roles in films like The Mask of Zorro, auditioned with a demo reel that showcased his ability to switch seamlessly between dramatic flair and slapstick humor. For Puss in Boots, the studio didn't even need a full audition. They looped in Banderas early in development, around 2006 when the project shifted from a direct-to-video release to a theatrical feature. This early involvement allowed him to influence the script, suggesting more Spanish-inflected dialogue and physical comedy beats that played to his strengths. During recording sessions in Los Angeles, Banderas worked closely with director Chris Miller, often improvising lines and character to heighten the film's adventurous tone. One session anecdote highlights how Banderas, drawing from his theater background, performed entire scenes standing on a mark with the prop sword, mimicking the cat's agile leaps to ensure his voice matched the animation's fluidity. This hands-on approach not only refined Puss' vain personality, you think of those signature milk-drinking close-ups with the sultry gas, but also set the bar for the ensemble, encouraging other actors to bring their own improvisational energy. Expanding the world around Puss required fresh faces to populate the origin story, and Salma Hayek emerged as the perfect counterpart for Kitty Softpaws, the sleek tuxedo cat who serves as both rival thief and romantic interest. Hayek's casting was a deliberate nod to cultural synergy. As a Mexican-American actress with a powerhouse presence in Hollywood, she mirrored Banderas' Latin flair, creating an on-screen chemistry that sparked from their very first duet-like banter. DreamWorks targeted Hayek specifically during pre-production, recognizing her experience in roles that blended sensuality and strength, such as in Frida or From Dusk Till Dawn. Her voice for Kitty was envisioned as a sultry purr, contrasting Puss' bombastic bravado with a street-smart wit that could disarm foes and lovers alike. In auditions, Hayek reportedly read scenes from the script's heist sequences, where Kitty outmaneuvers Puss in a rooftop chase, her delivery laced with playful taunts that hinted at the budding romance. Producers noted that her natural accent and rhythmic timing made her ideal for the character's bilingual quips, adding layers to Kitty's backstory as a skilled pickpocket raised in the shadows of San Ricardo. The recording process for Hayek was marked by collaborative sessions with Banderas, where the two actors bantered off each other in real time, even across different studios. This remote improv helped forge the romantic tension, with Hayek suggesting ad-libs like Kitty's flirtatious "mi amor" whispers that echoed through the film's moonlit encounters. One memorable trivia from the set involves a Paris premiere in late 2011, where Hayek and Banderas arrived arm-in-arm with the life-sized, costumed Puss in Boots mascot, turning the red carpet into an impromptu reenactment of a Kitty-Puss duel. This event underscored how the casting elevated the film's promotional appeal, drawing on the actor's star power to market the spin-off as a romantic adventure comedy. Hayek's involvement also influenced Kitty's design. Animators tweaked the character's sleek fur and expressive eyes to match her vocal nuances, ensuring the visual feline grace aligned with Hayek's poised delivery. Through this casting, Kitty Softpaws wasn't just a love interest as she became a fully realized foil, challenging Puss' ego and ultimately stealing his heart, all thanks to the electric dynamic Hayek brought to the booth. No discussion of the casting would be complete without delving into Zach Galifianakis' breakout turn as Humpty Alexander Dumpty, the scheming, egg-shaped mastermind whose fractured friendship with Puss drives much of the emotional core. This marked Galifianakis' debut in voice acting, a bold choice by the DreamWorks team who had been fans of his offbeat comedy from shows like Funny or Die sketches. From the project's inception, producers eyed Galifianakis for Humpty, seeing in his lanky, improvisational style the perfect fit for an ingenious freak of nature, a character inspired by executive producer Guillermo del Toro's vision of a Leonardo da Vinci-like inventor with a grudge. The egg's design, complete with contraptions like a makeshift flying machine, demanded a voice that could oscillate between manic genius and heartfelt vulnerability, and Galifianakis delivered with a gravelly, barely recognizable timbre that surprised even the crew. His audition tape, reportedly a home-recorded ramble through Humpty's betrayal monologue, sealed the deal, showcasing his ability to layer humor with pathos. What set Galifianakis' casting apart was the freedom afforded during recording. As a voice-over novice, he was encouraged to improvise wildly, often derailing sessions into fits of laughter that found their way into the final cut. For instance, Humpty's high-altitude squeaks on the beanstalk caused by the thin air stemmed from Galifianakis' off-the-cuff helium impressions, adding a layer of absurdity to the trio's skyward climb. This improvisational leash allowed the character to evolve from a straightforward villain to a redeemable anti-hero, whose sacrificial plunge at the film's bridge climax resonates deeply. Del Toro, dialing in advice via what the team called an emergency phone for creative tweaks, praised Galifianakis for humanizing Humpty's orphanage backstory with Puss, turning their teen bank heist mishap into a poignant exploration of abandonment. Galifianakis' background in live action, where physical comedy like his bearded deadpan in The Hangover shone, translated surprisingly well to animation. Animators adjusted Humpty's wobbly gait and expressive shell cracks to sync with his vocal cracks, making the egg one of the film's most memorable creations. This casting gamble paid off, positioning Galifianakis as a voice talent staple and infusing Puss in Boots with an unpredictable energy that kept audiences guessing about Humpty's true loyalties. The villainous duo of Jack and Jill brought a gritty, murderous edge to the proceedings, and casting Billy Bob Thornton and Amy Sedaris as the outlaw couple was a masterstroke in balancing menace with mirth. Thornton, known for his brooding intensity in films like Sling Blade and Fargo, was handpicked early on for his ability to subvert expectations. Voicing Jack on a hulking, bean-hoarding brute, he leaned into a thick southern drawl that evoked backwoods menace, a deliberate departure from his usual roles to embrace the challenge of animated villainy. Thornton relished the opportunity, noting in interviews that the isolation of the recording booth let him experiment without the constraints of on-set dynamics. His audition focused on the hideout ambush scene, where Jack's guttural threats clash with Jill's shrill retorts, and Thornton's gravelly timbre added a chilling authenticity to their marital discord. Producers appreciated how his voice grounded the fantastical elements. Jack's obsession with the magic beans felt palpably greedy, his lines dripping with avarice during the wagon chase. Sedaris, on the other hand, was a repeat collaborator with director Chris Miller from Shrek the Third, making her a safe yet inspired pick for Jill. A comedian with a flair for the absurd evident in her work on Strangers with Candy, Sedaris was tasked with matching Thornton's intensity while injecting chaotic humor. Her casting brief emphasized improvisation, and she delivered in spades, recording nearly 50 variations of key lines like Jill's battle cries during the beanstalk pursuit. This multiplicity allowed editors to cherry-pick the wildest takes, such as her unscripted hillbilly yelps that synced perfectly with the couple's tumbling antics. The duo's sessions were synced remotely, with Thornton and Sedaris trading quips over headphones, fostering a bickering rhythm that mirrored their characters' toxic partnership. One trivia tidbit: Sedaris drew inspiration from real-life outlaw couples, exaggerating Jill's ferocity to make her the dominant force, which influenced animators to give her exaggerated physicality, a thick wild hair and a perpetual scowl. Together, Thornton and Sedaris' casting created a comedic foil to the heroes' camaraderie, their southern-inflected menace providing levity in the film's darker revenge plot twists. Supporting the core ensemble, Constance Marie's casting as Imelda, Puss' adoptive human mother, added a tender emotional anchor to the whirlwind of heists and high-stakes chases. Marie, a veteran of telenovelas and films like Selena, brought a warm, maternal gravitas that contrasted the film's frenetic pace. Her scene as a particularly the heartfelt reunion where Imelda expresses unyielding pride in her feline soul required a voice laced with quiet strength and subtle heartbreak. DreamWorks cast Marie for her ability to convey cultural resonance as a Latina actress. She infused Imelda with the nurturing spirit of a San Ricardo matriarch, her delivery rich with accented inflections that echoed Banderas' Puss. Auditions honed in on the present plea sequence, where Imelda's pleas for Puss to surrender peacefully tugged at heartstrings, and Marie's emotive reading won over the team. Recording was intimate, often just Miller and Marie in the booth, allowing her to layer vulnerability into lines that humanize the cat's outlaw status. This choice deepened the film's exploration of found family, with Imelda's voice bridging Puss' animal world and the human town, making her brief role unforgettable. Guillermo del Toro's multifaceted involvement extended to voicing the Comandante, San Ricardo's stern military leader hell-bent on capturing Puss. As executive producer, del Toro wasn't initially slated for acting, but his passion for the project led to this cameo, much like his vocal contributions in other DreamWorks fare. Known for fantastical epics like Pan's Labyrinth, del Toro's casting was organic during story sessions. He would slip into character to demo authoritative barks, impressing the team with his booming, accented timbre. The Comandante's role demanded a voice of unyielding command, patrolling the town's borders with clipped orders, and del Toro delivered with a theatrical edge honed from his directing days. His emergency phone consultations often bled into recordings, where he'd improvise Comandante lines on the fly, adding bureaucratic humor to the militia pursuits. This duo role enriched the casting tapestry, as del Toro's vision for Humpty's redemption arc intertwined with the Comandante's rigid law enforcement, creating thematic tension around justice and forgiveness. Director Chris Miller's decision to voice multiple minor characters, Little Boy Blue, Friar Miller, the prison guard, Manuel, and Raphael, exemplified the film's scrappy, ensemble spirit. As a veteran of the Shrek series, Miller's multifaceted talents made him ideal for these utility roles, from the whimsical nursery rhyme nods in Little Boy Blue to the gruff authority of the prison guard. His recordings were efficient, often batched in marathon sessions, allowing him to weave connective tissue through the narrative. For instance, Friar Miller's confessional whispers during Puss' origin flashback added ironic levity, while Manuel and Raphael's banded chatter fleshed out the town's underbelly. Miller's casting here was pragmatic yet creative, saving budget while infusing the periphery with insider humor that rewarded eagle-eyed fans. Delving deeper into the selection processes, DreamWorks casting director, Lely Feldman, orchestrated a strategy that blended franchise loyalty with bold risks. Banderas' reprise was non-negotiable, locked in by 2005 amid the project's video origins, but the theatrical pivot in 2006 opened doors for stars like Galifianakis. Feldman's team scouted comedians pushing boundaries, reviewing tapes from Between Two Ferns prototypes that highlighted his eccentric delivery. For Thornton, the pitch was framed as a voice villain vacation. Appealing to his interest in genre bending, he signed on after a single table read over phone. Charmed by the script's outlaw absurdity, Sedories, leveraging her Shrek rapport, auditioned via video from New York, her manic energy leaping off the screen in Jill's ambush rants. Hayek's process was star-driven. A lunch meeting with producers sealed it, where she pitched Kitty as a femme fatale with claws, aligning with her advocacy for strong Latina roles. Marie was cast through agency recommendations, her telenovela clips proving her emotional range, while del Toro self-inserted during a producer powwow, his enthusiasm overriding any formalities. The voice recording workflows were tailored to maximize each actor's strengths, revealing how casting informed the film's production rhythm. Sessions at DreamWorks Glendale Studios spanned 2009 to 2011, with Banderas logging over 50 hours, often in Spanish-English hybrids to capture Puss' bilingual charm. Improv was king. Galifianakis' freeform riffs on Humpty's gadget monologues extended takes to 20 minutes, yielding gold like the egg's paranoid whispers about betrayal. Thornton, preferring structure, recorded in Nashville for authenticity, his southern twang requiring minimal direction but multiple passes for Jill sinks. Cindery's 50-line variants for a single scene. Jill's bean-snatching taunts created a pick-and-mix editing buffet, with Miller splicing for escalating chaos. Hayek and Banderas' romantic duets were looped together via video feeds, their laughter breaking tension and birthing spontaneous flirtations. Del Toro's Comandante bits were quick hits, sandwiched between producer notes, while Marie's Imelda work focused on emotional isolation, no other actors present to preserve intimacy. Miller's multi-role days were logistical feats, voice-shifting mid-booth to layer crowd scenes, ensuring seamless world-building. Anecdotes from these sessions paint a vivid picture of the casting's collaborative magic. Banderas once halted a Puss Kitty love scene to coach Hayek on a cat fight meow, drawing from his own pet experiences for authenticity. Galifianakis, intimidated by animation isolation, brought a whoopee cushion to Humpty's betrayal rant, accidentally cracking up the sound engineer and inspiring the egg's flatulent contraption gags. Thornton's enjoyment peaked in a late-night Jack monologue about being lore, where he channeled the bad Santa-esque Grant, too profane for the final cut but fueling reshoots. Cindery's improv marathons led to a Jill-off, where she and Miller voted on takes, crowning a hillbilly holler that became the couple's signature. Del Toro's phone interventions saved a flagging Humpty arc, suggesting a Da Vinci sketchbook prop that Galifianakis voiced with feverish zeal. Marie shared a tearful post-session hug with Miller, her Imelda pride mirroring her own maternal roles, while Miller's Friar confession took 12 takes due to his uncontrollable giggles at Puss' confessional fibs. These casting choices rippled into character development, elevating Puss in Boots from spin-off novelty to emotional powerhouse. Banderas' Puss grew from Shrek-esque quippy ally to honor-obsessed anti-hero, his vocal vulnerability and orphanage flashbacks coaxed by Marie's Imelda exposing cracks in the bravado. Hayek's Kitty softened this edge, her seductive purrs evolving from rivalry to alliance, with improv kisses in the booth foreshadowing their epilogue smooch. Galifianakis' Humpty, shaped by Del Toro's input, became the film's mortal pivot. His improv grudge rants deepened the egg's redemption, making the golden shell reveal a gut punch. Thornton and Cindery's Jack's injected peril, their accented threats grounding the magic bean's lore, while their comedic implosion in the hospital coda balanced the stakes. Supporting voices like the Comandante amplified themes of flawed justice, Del Toro's authority clashing with Puss' roguish code. Trivia abounds in how these voices intertwined with animation. Banderas' sword flourishes sank to precise lip flaps, requiring animators to adjust for his trills. Galifianakis' wobbly egg rolls matched his vocal tremors, a happy accident from booth vibrations. Cindery's yelps timed to Jill's pratfalls, with 50 takes yielding the perfect pitch for beanstalk tumbles. The Paris premiere stunt, with Banderas and Hayek fencing a mascot, echoed their recording duels, boosting box office buzz. Del Toro's ending rewrite, redeeming Humpty, stemmed from a casting epiphany. Galifianakis' pathos demanded heroism, not just villainy. In reflecting on the ensemble's alchemy, it's clear the casting wasn't mere assignment but a creative forge. Banderas' anchor allowed risks like Galifianakis' debut, while Hayek's spark ignited romance amid heists. Thornton and Cindery's grit contrasted the whimsy, Marie's warmth humanized the feline, and Del Toro/Miller's cameos wove texture. This voice tapestry improvised, accented, heartful to breathe life into Perrault's cat, proving casting's power in animation's silent craft. The journey of Puss in Boots as a standalone film began in 2004, immediately following the successful release of Shrek 2. Chris Miller, who served as head of story for Shrek 2, emerged as a passionate advocate for creating a spin-off centered on the swashbuckling feline character. His enthusiasm stemmed from both his affection for the character and his recognition of the compelling narrative possibilities inherent in the adventurous backstory Puss had referenced in the original film. Initially conceived as a direct-to-video release scheduled for 2008, the project bore the working title Puss in Boots, the story of an ogre killer. However, by October 2006, DreamWorks Animation reassessed the project's potential and made a pivotal decision to transform it into a theatrical release. This shift reflected changing market conditions and, more significantly, the studio's growing conviction that the Puss character possessed sufficient appeal to command a full cinematic treatment. Miller transitioned directly from directing Shrek III to helming this ambitious spin-off, bringing with him intimate knowledge of the character and the broader Shrek universe. A crucial turning point in the film's development arrived in September 2010 when acclaimed filmmaker Guillermo del Toro joined the production as executive producer. Having recently departed from the Hobbit film project, Del Toro accepted an invitation from the crew to view an early screening that blended completed animation with storyboard sequences. His enthusiastic response to this preliminary version led him to request involvement in the production process. His participation proved transformative for the film's creative direction. Del Toro's contribution extended far beyond nominal involvement. Miller established a collaborative system whereby Del Toro would visit periodically to review new material, while also remaining available for consultation on specific creative challenges. This arrangement functioned as an informal mentorship, with the director describing it as having their own film school. Del Toro's influence proved particularly significant in shaping Humpty Dumpty's character design, suggesting an approach inspired by Leonardo da Vinci. He conceived Humpty as a brilliant inventor who constructs elaborate devices including a flying machine, adding technological wonder to the fairy tale setting. Perhaps most notably, Del Toro rewrote the film's conclusion to provide redemption for Humpty's character while deepening his relationship with Puss, an unconventional narrative choice for family-oriented entertainment. He also contributed substantially to designing the fantasy elements of the giant's castle and helped conceptualize the town's architecture as an amalgamation of Spanish and Mexican influences, creating a distinctive visual identity that set the film apart from its Shrek predecessors. The filmmakers encountered a persistent creative challenge regarding the giant from the Jack and the Beanstalk fairy tale. While they had successfully developed the world of the giant, incorporating the character himself proved problematic. Despite numerous attempts to include him faithfully as a classic fairy tale figure, his presence consistently felt predictable and undermined narrative surprise. Ultimately, they made the bold decision to have the giant killed off-screen before the story begins, subverting traditional fairy tale expectations and creating space for the Great Terror of the Mother Goose to serve as the primary antagonist. Casting decisions began early in pre-production, with the creative team targeting specific actors for key roles. Antonio Banderas reprised his beloved role as Puss from the Shrek films, providing continuity and star power. The filmmakers specifically pursued Zach Galifianakis, Billy Bob Thornton, Amy Sedaris, and Salma Hayek for the principal cast. For Galifianakis, Humpty Dumpty represented his first voice-over work, and the team encouraged improvisation to capture his distinctive comedic sensibility. Thornton embraced the opportunity to voice Jack, viewing it as a chance to explore territory outside his usual performance range. Sedaris, with whom Miller had previously collaborated on Shrek III, improvised extensively as Jill, delivering approximately 50 variations of her scripted dialogue to provide maximum flexibility in the editing process. An important strategic decision involved creating entirely new characters beyond Puss himself. Co-writer David H. Steinberg explained that this approach served dual purposes. It enabled them to craft an original Puss narrative while avoiding potential continuity conflicts with Shrek Forever After, which was in development concurrently. The film's existence was subtly teased in Shrek Forever After through a brief shot of a book titled Puss in Boots sitting adjacent to the main Shrek storybook. Filming Puss in Boots marked a significant milestone as DreamWorks Animation's first film to incorporate substantial work completed in India. A Bangalore studio owned by Technicolor, which had primarily focused on television specials and DVD supplementary content, spent 6 months animating 3 major sequences for the feature. While this outsourcing arrangement offered financial advantages at approximately 40% lower labor costs compared to domestic production, the primary motivation was addressing a personnel shortage. DreamWorks Animation's ambitious production schedule, which aimed to release 3 films annually during this period, had stretched their available workforce to capacity. The successful integration of the Indian studio's work demonstrated the viability of international collaboration in major animated feature production. Post-production for Puss in Boots involved extensive refinement of the animation, visual effects, and narrative pacing. The film benefited from DreamWorks Animation's cutting-edge technology and the team's cumulative experience from the Shrek franchise. However, as a spin-off featuring an ensemble of new characters in unfamiliar settings, the post-production team faced unique challenges in establishing visual continuity while differentiating the film from its franchise roots. The three-dimensional rendering received particular attention, as the filmmakers aimed to create immersive environments that would showcase the capabilities of theatrical 3D presentation, which had become increasingly important to animated feature releases by 2011. Music. The musical landscape of Puss in Boots received careful attention from composer Henry Jackman, who crafted a score deeply rooted in Latin musical traditions. Drawing inspiration from Spanish composer Manuel de Falla, Jackman developed an orchestral palette that blended traditional instruments to guitars and Latin percussion with symphonic textures influenced by French impressionists Claude Debussy and Maurice Ravel. This fusion created a sound that felt simultaneously authentic to the film's Spanish-inspired setting and cinematically grand. A particularly distinctive element of the soundtrack came from the Mexican guitar duo Rodrigo y Gabriela, whose virtuosic acoustic performances contributed to Jackman's overall score. Two of their compositions, Diablo Rojo and Hanuman, were incorporated into the film, adding energetic flamenco-influenced sequences that complemented the action-oriented storytelling. Additionally, Lady Gaga's song Americano received prominent placement in this film, providing a contemporary musical moment that contrasted with the period-appropriate orchestral material. The official soundtrack album, featuring Jackman's complete original score, arrived in stores on October 26, 2011, through Sony Classical. Subsequently, on December 5, 2011, Paramount Pictures and DreamWorks Animation released the complete film score as part of their award season campaign, making the full musical achievement available for consideration by industry voters and music enthusiasts. Released theatrical. The theatrical release strategy for Puss in Boots underwent multiple revisions during its development. Originally scheduled for March 30, 2012, the release date shifted significantly earlier to November 4, 2011, effectively claiming the slot previously held by Rise of the Guardians in DreamWorks Animation's release calendar. However, a final adjustment moved the premiere one additional week earlier to October 28, 2011, and Globe, who led worldwide marketing for DreamWorks Animation, explained that this strategic timing aimed to capture family audiences before the competitive landscape became crowded with other family-oriented films arriving in November 2011. The film's world premiere took place in an unconventional venue on October 16, 2011, at the massive cruise ship Allure of the Seas, operated by Royal Caribbean International, while docked in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This creative premiere location generated substantial publicity and aligned with the film's adventurous spirit. Following this splashy debut, the film opened in conventional theaters across the United States on October 28, 2011. Technical presentation represented a significant aspect of the release strategy. Puss in Boots received digital remastering specifically for IMAX 3D exhibition, playing in 268 North American IMAX theaters and at least 47 IMAX locations internationally. This premium format presentation capitalized on audiences' willingness to pay higher ticket prices for enhanced viewing experiences, while the 3D rendering showcased the depth and visual sophistication of modern computer animation. The filmmakers had designed sequences specifically to exploit 3D technology, creating moments of spatial depth and dynamic movement that justified the format. An unusual situation arose regarding the film's international distribution, particularly in the United Arab Emirates. The movie was renamed Cat in Boots for its theatrical run throughout the Middle East, distributed through UAE-based channels. While official reasons for this change remained undisclosed, speculation centered on potential religious or cultural sensitivities. Notably, the UAE's National Media Council, responsible for censorship oversight, clarified that they had not mandated the title change. Rather, That decision originated with the Hollywood studio and regional distributors. This name alteration applied exclusively to the original theatrical release merchandise, and subsequent home media releases in the region retained the original Puss in Boots title. Home media. The home entertainment release of Puss in Boots arrived relatively quickly following its theatrical run. On February 24, 2012, the film became available across multiple formats: standard DVD, Blu-ray, and Blu-ray 3D, providing options for consumers with varying home entertainment systems. This multi-format strategy had become standard practice for major animated releases, accommodating both traditional viewers and early adopters of high-definition and three-dimensional home technology. A significant value-added component accompanied these releases: a short animated film titled Puss in Boots: The Three Diablos, which continued the adventures of the title character. This supplementary content provided additional storytelling while encouraging purchase over rental, as consumers sought to own the complete Puss in Boots experience. The home video release proved commercially successful, generating $72.3 million in sales and securing position as the 10th best-selling title of 2012. A strong performance that demonstrated sustained audience interest beyond the theatrical window. Another notable bonus feature included on the home media release was Klepto Kitty, a 3-minute profile of Dusty, a real California cat who had gained notoriety for stealing items from neighbors' yards. Animal Planet had documented this feline's nocturnal activities using a special night vision camera attached to Dusty's collar, and this footage was edited into a short documentary that complemented the film's cat-centric themes while providing unique educational content about actual cat behavior. The film experienced a revival in the home media market when it received a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray release on November 22, 2022. Strategically timed 1 month before the theatrical debut of its long-awaited sequel. This re-release in the highest quality consumer format allowed new audiences to discover the original film while providing existing fans an opportunity to upgrade their collections with superior picture and sound quality, capitalizing on renewed interest generated by sequel marketing. Reception. Box office. Puss in Boots achieved substantial commercial success, demonstrating that the character possessed sufficient appeal to anchor his own franchise. The film accumulated $149.2 million domestically in the United States and Canada, while international markets contributed $405.7 million, producing a worldwide total of $555 million. This performance occurred against a production budget of $130 million, making the film unquestionably profitable for DreamWorks Animation. The global gross positioned Puss in Boots as the 11th highest-earning film of 2011 across all genres, while it ranked as the 3rd highest-grossing animated feature of that year, trailing only Kung Fu Panda 2, $665.7 million, and Cars 2, $559.9 million. The North American opening demonstrated strong audience interest, with the film claiming the top position on its first day of release, earning $9.6 million. The opening weekend produced $34.1 million, a figure that surpassed Saw 3's previous record, $33.6 million, for the highest Halloween weekend opening in box office history. This record would stand for 12 years until Five Nights at Freddy's, $80 million, exceeded it in 2023. The film's performance in its second weekend proved even more remarkable. It retained first place while earning $33.1 million, representing a mere 3% decline from the opening frame via an extraordinarily strong hold that indicated excellent word of mouth and repeat viewing. This minimal second weekend drop set a record for the smallest decline of any non-holiday film, surpassing the previous benchmark held by Twister. International markets responded enthusiastically to Puss in Boots, though the film's global rollout occurred gradually across various territories. On its initial international opening weekend, the film earned $17.2 million and claimed second place in overseas markets. The United Kingdom proved particularly receptive, with the film debuting at number 1 and grossing £1.98 million, approximately $3.1 million, during its opening weekend. Australia similarly embraced the film, awarding it first place with $2.98 million in its opening frame. The film's international performance built momentum over time, eventually topping the overseas box office during its 7th weekend with $47.1 million collected from 40 countries. Ultimately, it finished 2011 as the 9th highest-grossing film internationally, demonstrating broad global appeal that transcended cultural boundaries. The strongest international markets after North America were Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States, which collectively generated $50.6 million, followed by Germany, $33.9 million, and the combined France and Maghreb region, $33.2 million. This geographic distribution illustrated the character's universal appeal while highlighting particularly strong reception in European markets. Critical response: professional critics received Puss in Boots with predominantly positive assessments, recognizing the film's entertainment value while noting its conventional narrative structure. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film earned an approval rating of 85% based on 151 reviews, with an average rating of 6.9 out of 10. The site's critical consensus captured the general reception, noting that while the film lacked profound depth or groundbreaking innovation, it compensated abundantly with wit, visual appeal, and charismatic charm. Metacritic, which employs a weighted average system, assigned the film a score of 65 out of 100 based on 24 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audience polling conducted by CinemaScore revealed that moviegoers awarded the film a grade on the company's A+ to F scale, suggesting strong mainstream approval that slightly exceeded critical assessments. Critics from major publications offered varied but largely positive perspectives on the film's achievements. Todd McCarthy, writing for The Hollywood Reporter, praised Puss in Boots as an entertaining adventure that showcased exceptional three-dimensional cinematography, describing it as some of the finest 3D work yet achieved in mainstream animation. He appreciated the film's colorful visual design, clever narrative construction, absence of insider entertainment industry references, action sequences that avoided excess, and skillful choreography. Peter Debreuge of Variety commended the origin story as capable of standing independently from the Shrek franchise, crediting the creative team's intelligent writing and Antonio Banderas' captivating central performance as the foundation of this success. Christy Lemire of the Associated Press awarded the film 3 out of 4 stars, characterizing it as effective family entertainment that succeeded even in 3 dimensions. She particularly noted that the 3D presentation felt thoughtfully integrated into the storytelling rather than functioning as a superficial gimmick. Bill Goodycoons from the Arizona Republic provided an enthusiastic 3.5 stars out of 5. Singling out Galifianakis' performance as Humpty Dumpty as a pleasant surprise that created one of the more compelling animated characters in recent memory. Moira MacDonald of the Seattle Times awarded 3 out of 4 stars and highlighted the film's ability to inspire imaginative fantasies, specifically mentioning that she left the theater dreaming of a world where cats could tango, a testament to the film's whimsical spirit. Several reviewers emphasized the vocal performances as particular strengths. Marjorie Baumgarten of the Austin Chronicle gave 3 out of 5 stars while praising the seductive chemistry between Banderas and Hayek, Galifianakis' nearly unrecognizable vocal contribution, and the Southern rural dialect worked from Thornton and Cinderace as elements that sustain audience engagement. Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times awarded 4 out of 5 stars, appreciating that the film never took itself excessively seriously, a tonal balance that enhanced rather than diminished the entertainment value. Stephen Holden of the New York Times granted 3.5 stars out of 5. Describing the film as a cheerfully chaotic amalgamation of fairy tale and nursery rhyme characters transplanted into a Spanish-influenced storybook environment. Claudia Puig of USA Today gave 3 out of 4 stars, emphasizing Banderas' impeccable comic timing and melodious Spanish accent as creating an undeniably delightful swashbuckling character. Michael O'Sullivan from The Washington Post, also awarding 3 out of 4 stars, expressed surprise at the film's quality, suggesting that many viewers would approach it with diminished expectations yet discover a surprisingly accomplished production. Stephen Whitty of the Newark Star-Ledger provided 3 out of 4 stars and playfully noted that this was an almost perfect small film that even dog owners could enjoy, a humorous acknowledgement of the film's cross-species appeal. Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal offered a positive assessment, noting that Puss had originally debuted in Shrek 2 before and during the progressively weaker third and fourth Shrek films. He viewed the standalone film as arriving at exactly the right moment, allowing the character to escape the declining quality of his parent franchise. Lisa Kennedy of the Denver Post awarded 3 out of 4 stars but tempered her praise with the observation that while entertaining, the film left its protagonist awaiting a richer narrative more befitting his charms and Banderas' talents, suggesting untapped potential for future installments. Not all critical responses reached positive conclusions. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly assigned the film a grade of C, arguing that the central joke of Puss in Boots, a cuddly creature attempting dashing heroism, exhausted its comedic potential within 15 minutes. Making the full feature feel overstretched. Colin Covert of the Star Tribune proved even more critical, awarding only 1.5 stars out of 4 and dismissively comparing the film's entertainment value to that of a toy that produces barnyard animal sounds when a string is pulled, suggesting minimal creative substance. Mixed reviews provided nuanced perspectives. Ty Burr of the Boston Globe gave 3 out of 4 stars while acknowledging that the film broke no new narrative ground and its relentless action sequences grew fatiguing. Yet he credited the movie with sharp wit that appealed to both children and parents. Anna Smith of Time Out awarded 3 out of 5 stars and described the film as uneven but capable of providing heavenly moments for cat enthusiasts when functioning at peak effectiveness. Among the more critical assessments, Tasha Robinson of the AV Club assigned a C+ grade and offered an insightful observation. While Puss in Boots delivered thrilling visual spectacle comparable to a theme park attraction, its characters lacked the dimensional complexity of the elaborate settings, remaining as flat as traditional cell animation despite the technological sophistication surrounding them. Several critics focused specifically on technical achievements. Stan Hall of the Oregonian awarded a B grade and Riley noted that Puss in Boots made no pretensions toward depth or self-seriousness. It simply aimed to achieve glory, win affection, and generate revenue, accomplishing all 3 objectives efficiently. Amy Biancoli of the Houston Chronicle gave 3 out of 5 stars while establishing 3 fundamental truths underpinning the film's success. Cats are inherently funny. Vain Spanish cats wearing high-heeled musketeer boots are even funnier and brooded. Vain Spanish cats voiced by a breathy Antonio Banderas reached the pinnacle of hilarity. The critical consensus ultimately positioned Puss in Boots as a technically accomplished, entertaining animated feature that successfully translated a popular supporting character into a leading role. While reviewers noted conventional storytelling and occasional pacing issues, they largely agreed that strong vocal performances, impressive visual design, effective humor, and genuine charm made the film a worthwhile family entertainment experience. The character's appeal proved sufficiently robust to overcome the diminishing returns that had afflicted later Shrek installments, suggesting that the spin-off strategy had successfully revitalized audience interest in this corner of DreamWorks Animation's franchise universe. Beyond immediate theatrical reviews, the film received recognition from various industry organizations. At the 84th Academy Awards, Puss in Boots earned a nomination for Best Animated Feature, competing against Rango, which ultimately won, Kung Fu Panda 2, A Cat in Paris, and Chico and Rita. This nomination validated the film's artistic achievements while positioning it within the conversation about the year's finest animated works. The film also received nominations from numerous critics groups and industry guilds, including multiple Annie Award nominations from the International Animated Film Society, recognition from the Producers Guild of America, and various technical achievements honored by the Visual Effects Society. The film's success extended beyond critical and commercial metrics to influence DreamWorks Animation's strategic thinking about franchise development. The positive reception demonstrated that carefully selected supporting characters from successful properties could anchor their own profitable franchises when given appropriate creative development and production resources. This lesson would inform subsequent decisions about expanding the studio's intellectual property through spin-offs and extended universe storytelling. Audience reception, measured through various channels beyond traditional criticism, indicated strong satisfaction across demographic groups. Parents appreciated the film's ability to entertain children while providing sufficient adult-oriented humor and references to prevent boredom during family viewings. The romance between Puss and Kitty Softpaws resonated with viewers seeking emotional depth beyond pure comedy, while the redemptive arc of Humpty Dumpty provided unexpected dramatic weight that elevated the material above simple adventure storytelling. The cultural impact of Puss in Boots, while perhaps not reaching the revolutionary status of the original Shrek film, nonetheless demonstrated DreamWorks Animation's continued ability to create appealing characters and entertaining narratives within competitive marketplace conditions. The film arrived during a period when animated features from multiple studios competed vigorously for audience attention, yet Puss in Boots successfully carved out its own identity while honoring its franchise heritage. The combination of traditional fairy tale elements with contemporary sensibilities, wrapped in cutting-edge animation technology, exemplified the studio's approach to creating commercially viable entertainment that satisfied both artistic and financial objectives. Years after its initial release, Puss in Boots maintains a respectable position within the broader landscape of animated features from the early 2010s. It neither redefined animation nor vanished into obscurity, instead occupying a comfortable middle ground as a well-crafted, thoroughly entertaining example of studio animation at a moment when computer-generated imagery had matured into a sophisticated artistic medium capable of producing visually stunning results that served compelling storytelling. The film's legacy would ultimately be measured not only by its immediate success but by its role in sustaining the Puss character through an 11-year gap until the critically acclaimed sequel, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, arrived in 2022 to demonstrate the enduring potential of this swashbuckling feline adventurer. Los Angeles, December 11, UPI. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, in theaters December 21, is a family fairy tale treat for the holidays. The film pushes animation further and has clever new takes on storybook characters for both kids and adults. Puss, voice of Antonio Banderas, loses his 8th life in his latest adventure. To preserve his 9th life, Puss retires, but, word of a wishing star with one last wish to give calls Puss back into action in the hopes he can wish for another 9 lives. Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, returns for this adventure and they meet many new characters along the way. Big Jack Horner, John Mulaney, still sticks his thumb in pies but he's become a crime lord, and he's after the wishing star too. So are Goldie, Florence Pugh, and the 3 bears, Ray Winstone, Olivia Colman and Samson Kayo, who make plenty of too much, too little, just right jokes. Puss in Boots isn't limited to the grim fairy tales that inspired Shrek. Not only does it incorporate Mother Goose characters too, but also Easter eggs from Lewis Carroll, L. Frank Baum and more. Puss himself dates back earlier than the Brothers Grimm, though they did include him in their stories too. Modern pop culture is also fair game, and a certain niche of movie buffs will appreciate a particular Nicolas Cage movie reference. Jack makes irreverent jokes about his villainy. After centuries of children's stories, let alone decades of family movies, a villain can't very well behave one-dimensionally without at least commenting on it. Puss and Kitty also let a dog, Perito, Harvey Gillen, tag along. Perito's endless optimism in the face of adversity makes him endearing to both the audience and his animated companions. Cat lovers will appreciate jokes about litter boxes, sleeping huddles and spray bottles. For all his bravery, Puss is still a feline. There is a dark streak to some of the story. A montage of Puss's previous 8 deaths is absurd enough to make the comedy palatable, but talk about Perito's abusive owners is more poignant. The Last Wish has a good message, though. Each character's wish reveals what they think they're lacking, and it's clear to the viewer granting that wish won't solve their problem. Fortunately, the heroes realize the lesson before it's too late, and it's clear the villains do themselves in for not heeding the wisdom. The animation draws inspiration from Japanese anime and stop-motion aesthetics in the action scenes. The camera whirls around the action ambitiously, but never too frenetically. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a top 3 entry in the Shrek-verse. It may not top the first 2 Shreks, but it's got a lot more to offer than some of the other sequels and spin-offs. Fred Topel, who attended film school at Ithaca College, is a UPI entertainment writer based in Los Angeles. He has been a professional film critic since 1999, a Rotten Tomatoes critic since 2001, and a member of the Television Critics Association since 2012. Read more of his work in entertainment. Puss in Boots mixes it all up, even more than in the Shrek movies, from which this likely candidate for a new animated franchise is spun off. It is a cheerfully chaotic jumble of fairy tale and noir. Puss in Boots opens on Friday nationwide. Directed by Chris Miller, written by Tom Wheeler, based on a story by Brian Lynch, Will Davis and Mr. Wheeler, edited by Eric Dapkwich's, music by Henry Jackman, choreography by Laura Gorenstein, Miller, production design by Guillermo Arritos, produced by Joe M. Aguilar and Latifa Awu, released by DreamWorks Animation. Running time: 1 hour 30 minutes. With the voices of Antonio Banderas, Puss in Boots, Salma Hayek, Kitty Softpaws, Zach Galifianakis, Humpty Dumpty, Billy Bob Thornton, Jack, and Amy Sedaris, Jill. Hey kids, wants to see a movie revolving around an aging male character dealing with a midlife crisis who's desperately afraid of his impending mortality? Just in time for Christmas? Not so much. Didn't think so. Now what if I told you that it was a Puss in Boots movie? Release date: Wednesday, December 21st. Cast: Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek Pinal, Olivia Colman, Harvey Guillén, Samson Kayo, Anthony Mendez, Wagner Moura, John Mulaney, Florence Pugh, D'Avine Roy Randolph, Ray Winstone. Director: Joel Crawford. Screenwriters: Paul Fisher, Tommy Swerdlow. Rated PG, 1 hour 40 minutes. It's been nearly 2 decades since the adorable Puss made his screen debut in Shrek 2 and 11 years since his starring debut, and he's worse for the wear. In an elaborate action sequence that opens his new animated adventure Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, he gets killed. That normally wouldn't be a problem for a cat with 9 lives, except that Puss has now lost 8 of them. Naturally, that prompts a visit to his concerned physician, Anthony Mendez, who advises him to adopt some lifestyle changes, like retiring and not dying anymore. He also attempts to take Puss's temperature, and not orally. The feline naturally demurs, assuring his doctor, "Trust me, I run hot." Puss, Antonio Banderas, has a more immediate solution to his problem. With the help of his former girlfriend and occasional foil Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek Pinal, also reprising her role, he heads into the Black Forest in search of the mythical wishing star that he hopes will restore his squandered lives. If you're wondering how he lost so many, screenwriters Paul Fisher and Tommy Swerdlow vividly illustrate the causes of his many demises in a hilarious montage that illustrates the frequent wit on display in DreamWorks Animation offerings. Not all of those deaths are heroic, as demonstrated by his gluttonous losing battle with a shellfish allergy. Puss and Kitty head into the forest, accompanied by Perito, Harvey Guillén, a mangy, aspiring therapy dog whom Puss meets when he takes temporary refuge in the overpopulated home of an obsessed cat lover, D'Avine Joy Randolph. Many adventures ensue, with the trio forced to contend with such nefarious characters as a teenage Goldilocks, Florence Pugh, gone bad, a very mature, oversized Jack Horner, John Mulaney, who, through the magic of engineering, sounds big here, now an underworld kingpin in a crime family consisting of Mama Bear, Olivia Colman, Papa Bear, Ray Winstone, and the not at all diminutive Baby Bear, Samson Kayo. Meanwhile, Puss is being pursued by the fearsome bounty hunter wolf, Wagner Moura, the visual personification of the mortality that haunts him. Darker in tone but still extremely funny, the film, like so many of its animated brethren, falters when resorting to the frenetic action sequences seemingly designed for Tyke's short attention spans. Those exhausting episodes pale in comparison to such uproarious scenes as a saucer-eyed feline face-off in which Puss attempts to prove he's the most adorable. Also highly amusing are the scenes involving the tiny, Jiminy Cricket-inspired ethical bug, who fruitlessly attempts to serve as Jack Horner's conscience. He's voiced by DreamWorks animation story supervisor Kevin McCann, doing a fun riff on Jimmy Stewart, making frequent if occasionally overdone allusions to Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. The film is directed by Joel Crawford. The Croods, A New Age, boasts a painterly animation style that feels richer than the usual computer graphics. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish looks great, but what really makes it work is Banderas' silky voice turn, conveying all of the characters' over-the-top feline suavity while making it clear that he's very much in on the joke. Too often, animated films feature supremely overpaid and overqualified voice casts whom children, and most adults, couldn't care less about. Banderas, on the other hand, is worth every penny. The legendary Puss in Boots, Antonio Banderas, has a problem. He's used up 8 of his 9 lives. Now faced with his own mortality, and with the bounty hunter, Wolf, Wagner Moura, on his tail, Puss decides to retire to a cat rescue home to live out the rest of his days without adventure or risk. But when he's given an opportunity to find the magical wishing star and wish for more lives, he jumps at the chance. Along with his old pal, Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, and a wannabe therapy dog, Perot, Harvey Gillen, Puss sets out for the ultimate prize, but he's not the only one who wants that wish. You know what kids today need? Stories about aging men grappling with their identity and facing their own mortality. No, well, that's what you're getting with this Puss in Boots sequel. Yet, somehow, it really works. The themes around mortality are combined with messages about trust, friendship, optimism, and appreciating what you have, which results in a multi-layered story that is sure to resonate with both children and adults. There's also a good balance of humor and heartfelt moments, which is hard to find in modern screenwriting. DreamWorks has a very distinct house style of animation, both in 2D and 3D. One of the best aspects of this production is that it puts its own spin on that 3D style, by moving away from photorealism and into a more painterly, almost comic book style. The action scenes are far more interesting than in the previous Shrek franchise productions, and the colorful and fantastical settings are beautifully rendered. I do think DreamWorks could have leaned further into this style, but I suppose they didn't want to vary too much from its predecessors. Though I enjoyed the movie overall, I do think it's going to skew to a slightly older audience than the first Puss in Boots film. The tone is darker, the themes slightly more mature, and some of the villains are relatively scary. The level of violence is also higher than expected, with background characters dying in various ways on screen, and Puss's various deaths being shown. It still fits into its PG rating, but I would warn parents of very young children to be cautious, especially if you're basing your expectations off of the Shrek films, which are far more lighthearted in their cartoon violence. That said, for older children and adults, I recommend this movie for a fun and surprisingly profound story about cherishing your life and the people in it. Directed by Joel Crawford, starring Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek, Harvey Gillen. Copyright 10. Running time, 100 minutes. Theatrical release December 21, 2022. Updated January 22, 2024. More than a decade after his first furry big-screen adventure itself a spin-off from the Shrek movies, A Puss in Boots, Banderas, is back for a colorful, energetic animated sequel entitled The Last Wish. It seems our swashbuckling cat has used up 8 of his 9 lives, and understandably wanting to live for quite a while longer, he gives up his fighting ways for a quiet life. That is until he hears about a magical wishing star that can grant a single wish to whomever finds it, sending him on an adventure that puts him in the way of crime family Goldilocks, Pew, and the 3 bears, Winstone and Coleman voicing Papa and Mama, corrupt pastry chef Jack Horner, John Mulaney, and Puss's ex-fiancée Kitty Softpaws Hayek, who wants the map for herself. As with the first movie and the Shrek films, this boasts some terrific adult humor as well as much cuteness, and those big puss eyes, for younger viewers, especially in the form of adorable stray dog Perito. Gileto the copyright 10. They might not understand some of the darker moments. Say there is a black-hooded wolf lurking around who is pretty scary even before you realize who he really is, or Puss's thoughts about mortality, but they will love the bright action sequences, a superb opening set piece and the novel animation that brings Puss's story to vibrant life on the screen. Hilarious for both adults and kids, with purringly perfect voice work from Banderas and Hayek. This is one of those rare sequels that improves on the original, and is way better than Shrek the Third and Shrek Forever After 2. Is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish suitable for kids? Here are our parents' notes. This does have some quite dark moments that may be too intense for very young viewers, under 7s. Spoiler alert: the wolf pursuing Puss is actually Death. Puss is very scared when he meets him, which may upset young viewers. There are chase and fight scenes, but it is all very fantastical. The Shrek film franchise has prided itself in its family-friendly meta-commentary. However, the Puss in Boots spin-off walked a different path while staying true to the spirit of the universe aesthetically, canonically, and tonally. In a way, the prequel was refreshing but also lacked originality, which made Puss in Boots: The Last Wish one of the more pleasant animated surprises of the year. More than a decade later, the titular character is getting a sequel. But there is something noticeably different about this installment regarding its aesthetics and tone. Borrowing from the swashbuckling hero Zorro and pulling from other fairy tales, the second installment is a welcomed return to the world we all know and love. And the best part of this is that the sequel is refreshing in its surprisingly darker and more mature approach to storytelling, yet remains accessible to all ages in its kid-friendly action, adventure, and comedy. In Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the title favorite fearless feline hero, Antonio Banderas, has experienced many death-defying adventures and lived to sing and dance the tales about them all. However, during that time, he has spent 8 of his lives frivolously, dying in 8 cartoonishly comedic ways that could have been prevented. In his final life, the cat who thought he was invincible faces his mortality and the terrifying death. Wagner Moura, who chases Puss in Boots like a cold shadow. He ominously whistles as he gets closer to his victim, and his blood-red eyes are so scary that they make the Puss fur stand straight up. Not only does his chilling presence add real stakes, but it also is in service of the film as it forces Puss to put his life in perspective. Terrified that he will die, Puss in Boots runs away in fear, something he has never done before in the 8 of his 9 lives. As such, he buries his former identity and hides away in a secluded cottage where he lives with a cliché copyright D crazy cat lady. As such, he's lost his dignity and is a shell of his former self. He is even forced to befriend Perito, Harvey Gillen, a dog disguised as a cat. Things are relatively peaceful as things can be for anyone going through a crisis and spiraling out of control. That is until Goldie, Florence Pugh, and her 3 bearers crime family, a Papa Bear, Ray Winstone, Mama Bear, Olivia Colman, and Baby Bear, Samson Ko, break in to claim the bounty on Puss in Boots. When they discover his grave, they inadvertently reveal their plans to find the mythical wishing star. Upon hearing this, Puss in Boots goes on one last quest to gain what he has lost, while also discovering that there is more to life than the adventures you make of it. But they aren't the only ones searching for the wishing star. Big Jack Horner, John Mulaney, is also looking for it for greedy reasons. As such, Puss in Boots reluctantly teams up with Perrault and his former ally Softpaws, Salma Hayek. Together, they use the wishing star map to cross the dark forest, which changes its landscape in accordance with the person that holds it and their emotional burdens. Puss in Boots is one of those rare later installments of the Shrek franchise that strikes a nice balance between style and substance. Visually, it is reminiscent of DreamWorks' previous film, The Bad Guys, which took an almost illustrative children's book approach to the animation. Here, the film blends traditional hand-drawn and painted styles with new-age CG depth and movement. As a result, it creates something more dynamic and fun to look at. At times it does feel like a comic book at big-budget anime, as the action sequences have an impact on them. Quite literally, battles with the Earth giant feel fluid and move at such a quick pace. The same can be said for the chase sequences. Meanwhile, showdowns with death are slowed down to a point to mirror the pacing that you'd see in some of the earlier westerns. Just replace guns with swords and sickles, and throw a few nods to Sergio Leone's spaghetti western themes. As great as the style is, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish also has a lot of substance. It's unafraid to address themes about the value of life and the inevitability of death in dark and mature ways. And as emotionally heavy as existential crises are, the film finds the joy and humor in embracing what you have now and living your current life like it was your last. Of course, since Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is set in the Shrek universe, there will be a lot of pop culture references and meta-humor, but the jokes aren't as contrived as those films. In fact, much of it is done in service of the story, with Gil copyright and Perito providing much of the laughs. While others may see Perito as deranged and oblivious, his endearing personality and ability to be positive during the direst of times make it hard not to like him. His innocence and genuine concern for others add just the right amount of brightness to an otherwise dark film. As for the rest of the vocal talent, they are utilized in ways that justify their casting. Pugh makes for a hilarious boss as the leader of the Three Bears crime family, and the banter between herself and Coleman, K.O., and Winstone comedically leans heavily into the idea that this is not just a gang, they are family. Then there's Mulaney's hammy performance as Jack Horner, the film's chief villain with murderous tendencies and humorous cruelty to others. And since this is a film set in the world of Shrek, they are all twisted plays on fairy tale characters. Even Kevin McCann's ethical buggy, a play on Jimmy Cricket, has a few hilarious moments. Oftentimes he fails to convince Jack Horner not to sacrifice his bakers doesn't help frivolously. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a wildly imaginative genre-bending animated film filled with characters undergoing an existential crisis, hilarious and heartfelt moments, and beautiful 2D and 3D animation. The script is poignant and clever, not once undermining its audience's intelligence. Despite some of its predictability and familiar formula, it knows how to push the story forward the right way and when to lighten the mood with its meta-comedy, pop culture references, and music beats. More than a decade later, director Joel Crawford and co-director Januel Mercado, using a screenplay by Paul Fisher and Tommy Swerdlow, have figured out reason for us to revisit the Shrek franchise and want more out of it. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish opens in theaters on December 21, 2022. Back before he crossed paths with Shrek and Co., Puss, Banderas, was a roving outlaw and thief, haunted by his best friend Humpty Dumpty's Galifianakis seeming betrayal and looking for a way to clear his name. His first big adventure involved a beanstalk, a giant's treasure, and a fetching feline named Kitty Softpaws. Hayek. Broken bar: The Shrek franchise has been DreamWorks' golden goose, a powerhouse at the box office that has kept popping out shiny dollar signs. But, smartly realizing that they can't keep forcing it to deliver forever, the company has now turned its attention to one of the most popular characters to show up in the series, Puss in Boots. It's a good move too, since Antonio Banderas' frisky feline is mostly able to hold up the weight of his own adventure. Taking him back to his orphaned roots for an origin story, this standalone tale proves that there was a solid vein of entertainment still to be tapped with the furry one. He's gone from stealing scenes in Shrek to stealing trinkets, and the golden goose idea is still apt, since the script mixes the basic concept of Humpty Dumpty, Jack and the Beanstalk, and Jack and Jill. Yes, Kidlit is still ripe pickings for the plot, as Jack and Jill this time are ruthless bandits brought to life deftly by Amy Sedaris and grumpily by Billy Bob Thornton. The Beanstalk, present and correct, though it's not a giant person who gets annoyed when the golden eggs go missing. But the standout of them all is Humpty, voiced with able emotion by Zach Galifianakis, bullied as a child. Though whoever thought it was a good idea to mix a seemingly fragile egg boy with real children is clearly just looking to make an omelet, and full of big dreams. Humpty's transformation from wide-eyed nerd to criminal genius is heartfelt and well realized. Like the fighter at the center of it all, this spin-off is swift on its paws and, happily, much lighter on the pop cultural gags than most of its progenitors' entries. There's still a tendency to try to cram too much in, but on the whole, it works. Hayek does decent work and has plenty of spark with Banderas. They've shared the screen several times in live action before, though Kitty Softpaws herself never quite becomes as memorable as, say, Jessica Rabbit in terms of worryingly sexy animated characters. But it's nice to see DreamWorks continuing to let the voices do the heavy lifting instead of slipping back into old habits and relying on A-list wattage to draw in the crowds. Here, the cat's the star, and because there's so much focus on the hero, there are a torrent of gags that are, for the most part, effective. So we get a pod joke about catnip, it's for my glaucoma, and Puss in Boots is always ordering lech. Plus, we find out that the idea of cats always landing on their feet is a myth spread by dogs. An early standout sequence is the dance-off between Puss and Kitty at the G-Litter Box Bar, a wonderfully realized parade of flamenco meets Step Up that gives both the animators and actors a chance to shine. And of course, given Humpty Dumpty's presence, there are lots of jokes about bad eggs. Avoiding most of the pitfalls of what Jon Favreau once labeled parent punishers, Boots blends laughs for grown-ups with material for the kids. Just don't go expecting much wild invention in the storytelling department. Not that the Shrek series was ever exactly mold-breaking itself. This spin-off is strictly a chance for the hero to find his true nature, reclaim his good name and look good while he does it. The movie itself looks good too. The crisp 3D is never overused and the visuals, including some great Spanish-flavored locales in desert badlands, are fantastic, with nods, winks and flat-out theft of everything from Zorro, naturally, and James Bond to noir and Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. It's also, tellingly, the first DreamWorks outing to show the fingerprints of executive producer Guillermo del Toro, who added a little extra spice to the proceedings and also crops up in 2 small voice cameos. Given the film's early success at the US box office, it would appear that DreamWorks has found a new cash cow to milk, so expect to see more of the Maggie, especially since there's plenty of story left to fill between the end of this and his first appearance in Shrek 2. If any future entries are as fun as this one, it should enjoy a long, healthy life. Just not 9 of them. Like most kittens, it's not always perfectly behaved. But at least this new Puss adventure doesn't have you reaching for the cinematic spray bottle. It has been a long decade since Fiona's father hired Puss in Boots, Antonio Banderas, to hunt down our beloved green monster, Shrek. As soon as he jumped out of his famous footwear, sprang those claws, and interrupted his famous catchphrase for a hilarious hairball, the magnetic feline has been a beloved character in animated movies. It's a wonder why DreamWorks waited so long. After appearing in 2 Shrek films in the standalone spin-off, to greenlight another installment of adorable machismo cuteness, and they accomplished that sentiment with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, an animated film that is a meowvelous delight from start to finish. The Puss in Boots franchise picks up where the feisty feline's taste for adventure has never died. He had taken over a castle taken up by a man of royal status. My guess is this was a Frenchman when France colonized Spain in the early 19th century. He steals from the rich and gives back to the poor. Unfortunately, when the royalty wanders home with his pudgy midsection and full white locks from an exquisitely crafted periwig, Frisky 2 times must run for it. As he does, with more flair than the nature boy with his scintillating charango playing, he escapes, all while downing some shots of lech and saving the town from a tree monster awakened by a series of fireworks set off with the whopping helping of gusto. However, after years of adventures and a passion for life, our Diablo Gato has used up 8 of his 9 lives during all those epic journeys. Our feline friend refuses to turn in his fine kitten and leather footwear, put away his rapier, and hang up his cavalier hat, that is, until a big, evil wolf bounty hunter, Wagner Moura, shows up. They want to take Puss down, dead or alive, and he would prefer to be dead. Frightened for the first time, he takes off searching for the last wish, where he can restore his 9 lives. Of course, he isn't the only one searching for the smith in the dark forest. Puss in Boots will run into new foes and old friends and make a lovable new one along with way. And that's where Joel Crawford's The Croods, A New Age, film shines. Besides Banderas' flawless comedic delivery, you have the return of the world's most famous tuxedo cat, Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, and their chemistry is terrific. You have classic fairy tale characters given creative spins, for which the Shrek franchise is known. Goldilocks, voiced by Florence Pugh, and the Three Bears, voiced by an incredible lineup of Olivia Colman, Ray Winstone, and Samson Ko, with selfish intentions, but their story has sweet themes behind them. Then you have the deliciously evil Jack Horner, John Mulaney, overdoing it as only he can. He is now grown up, still sticking his thumb in pies where it doesn't belong. You even have some fine touches from Paul Fisher's funny and touching script. For example, the hilarious and scene-stealing ethical bug, voiced by Kevin McCann, gives the film an underlying humor that complements the film perfectly. However, the breakout character is Reacher S. Harvey Guillén as Perot, a charming and eternal optimist whose primary goal is to become a therapy dog. Guillén makes a character that could have been cliché and tired, fresh and new again. Expect spin-offs, including specials and streaming series, for Perot in the near future. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is an unexpected treat. With an eye-catching and risky choice of combining 2D and 3D animation, this installment of the Stabby Tabby is a serendipitous surprise, and a welcome one at that. With a combination of meaningful themes and a wonderful sense of humor, this is a perfect family film for parents and little ones over the holidays. You might say, an animated masterpiece. In his first film review, senior staff writer Jonathan Schlesinger talks about the surprisingly mature character arcs and themes that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish demonstrates, that life is meant to be enjoyed and experienced with those you love. Before I begin, I have to be honest about the fact that I am not a critical watcher of movies. Like many, I find cinema as purely a means of escapism. I don't spend my time picking apart camera shots or the director's choices, despite the fact that they would enhance my experience or strengthen my takeaways. Likewise, part of the appeal in deciding to see Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was that it seemed to be a vessel of pure escapism. I wouldn't feel guilty for not absorbing any subliminal messages, because children's movies usually do the heavy lifting when it comes to explaining their overarching ideas. Puss in Boots took on this burden graciously, creating a captivating storyline, lovable characters, and beautiful themes, all buoyed by stunning animation. My friend and I both walked into the theater expecting nothing but a fine little kids movie, but we walked out surprised by how touched we felt. Everyone is familiar with the beloved Puss in Boots, as he boasts himself within the opening sequence. He's a legend larger than life. The scrappy orange feline voiced by Antonio Banderas was introduced in Shrek 2. He was given both a spin-off movie and a television show that kept the character on the public radar and solidified him on the roster of notable DreamWorks characters. Over 10 years after his first solo film, The Last Wish arrived as a sequel. However, as someone who went into the movie without any real prior knowledge of the character, I can attest to the fact that the first movie is not necessary for following the sequel. The plot centers around Puss realizing he is down to the last of his 9 lives, and while he initially dismisses this, he is confronted with one of the most terrifying villains I have ever seen in a children's movie: Death. Wagner Moura, personified as a wolf. Their interaction scares Puss into hiding, where he undergoes an identity crisis in the security of a crazy cat lady's home. It's here that the secondary group of villains, Goldilocks, Florence Pugh, and the Three Bears, destroy the house Puss is hiding in to search for him. The bandits want to hire him to steal a map of the wishing star, a magical item said to grant the user a wish of their choosing. Puss is reinvigorated by this knowledge because he sees an opportunity to wish for his 9 lives back. In attempting to steal this map from the movie's third villain, Jack Horner, John Mulaney, he runs into an old accomplice and love interest, Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, and adopts an unnamed canine companion, Harvey Guillén. Map in hand and 3 separate villains in hot pursuit, Puss, Softpaws, and their new nameless dog accomplice set out in search of the wishing star. The protagonists are wonderfully likable. Kitty Softpaws creates a facade of independence and toughness, but she truly craves to let her guard down and be vulnerable with someone. Perito, The nickname Puss has given to his once nameless friend is the opposite of soft Puss. He is incredibly vulnerable and sees the good in everyone around him even when doing so harms him. He comes across as rather dense when describing past maltreatment as fun and games, but shaping the world into pure good is arguably harder than succumbing to cynicism. There is admiration to be found in his naivety. Puss is initially reluctant to be accompanied by soft Puss and Perito for the risk that they uncover the messy personality beneath the legend. Puss's Achilles heel is made rather obvious: his ego and desire to maintain the legendary status that takes up so much space in his heart that there's little room for everything else. But, in journeying with soft Puss and Perito, he finds himself opening up and feeling more relieved every time he does. Choosing to let himself be known and letting others put their faith in him is enough to give him a new perspective. They're all searching for something, to mend the wounds of their pasts and ensure a secure and brighter future, and this is done by allowing others to help shoulder these tasks. Sure, Puss is down to his last life, but letting people love him in this one is all that he'll ever need. Despite there being many antagonists, the plotline manages to stay grounded when it could have easily dissolved into chaos. Each villain is well-rounded and straightforward when necessary, and all of them serve as foils to Puss and solidifying his final character arc. Goldilocks and the Bears are a ragtag family of bandits whose journey of appreciating one another comes full circle as Puss begins to love his chosen family. Death desires to be respected. He's frustrated by how careless Puss has been with his past lives and seeks to end the last one as punishment for the disrespect. Puss, who has been running from him for the entire movie, eventually squares up to face him. Tired of running, he is willing to fight for his loved ones in a newfound life. Jack Horner is simply an evil, spoiled, and destructive child, and defeating him requires Puss to shed his strict independence and cooperate with everyone around him. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish sticks its landing as it juggles sophistication, appealing to its target audience, and plot. While some jokes stick out as exceptionally childish and the film occasionally defaults to slapstick humor, these are scenes that children are meant to enjoy. Death and chosen family are two themes that the film drives home. While a younger audience might simply be entertained by the vivid colors and fights between a wolf with sides and a cat with the sword, the movie manages to incorporate sophisticated messages. Family is who we choose to surround ourselves with, and it is our responsibility to learn how to appreciate those who choose to show up for us. Death is inevitable, and it is impossible to try and run from it. Instead of letting this be a paralyzing fear, we use this knowledge to be grateful for the life that we are gifted with and learn how to love more deeply. What's more, life is meant to be shared. Life is most fulfilling when love is mutually exchanged, and in Puss's case, it gives him enough courage to fight death one-on-one. Complete with an A-list cast and incredible animation, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a great escapist movie for anyone with a couple of hours to spare. Before there was a grumpy green ogre, before a donkey started making wisecracks, before there was a princess whiling away her hours in a tower, there was a cat a broken bar with a penchant for platform shoes. Puss in Boots is a spin-off from the Shrek series that tells the tale of the swashbuckling feline, voiced by Antonio Banderas, before he met the ogre with the funny name. Viewers discover that Puss was once an orphan growing up in the pseudo-Mexican town of San Ricardo. There he became friends with Humpty Dumpty, Zach Galifianakis, a pointy-headed loner given to grand schemes. Their ultimate plan was to find the magic beans that would help them infiltrate a giant's castle and pull off the greatest golden goose heist in history. However, Humpty and Puss parted ways when his egghead friend decided that robbing the townsfolk was a quicker path to riches. Humpty headed to prison and Puss hit the road. The arrival of a slinky crook, Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, throws the friends back together again. But will their new plot to pilfer the giant amount to more than a hill of beans? A box office smash, and flop. A blend of 3D animated action and tough guy mockery, Puss in Boots is helmed by Chris Miller, who has completely immersed himself in the Shrek franchise. He contributed dialogue and character voices to the first two films as well as writing and directing the third. DreamWorks initially intended this spin-off to be released straight to DVD, but presumably the original voice talent and Miller's experience convinced its producers to aim for a cinematic release. It's a decision they may be regretting now. Puss in Boots opened in the US on October 28 and broke the record for the highest-grossing Halloween weekend of all time, previously held by Saw 3. But to put that in proportion, its debut at the box office was also the worst in DreamWorks history since Flushed Away. Puss in Boots cost $130 million to make and has so far returned just over $170 million in ticket sales worldwide. Once marketing and distribution costs are factored in, DreamWorks will now be looking to those DVD sales to break even. Why Puss in Boots failed? So how did the child of such a reputable franchise go wrong? Part of it has to do with the confusion over the film's audience. The Shrek movies managed to expand their appeal by walking the fine line between childish buffoonery and adult humor. Puss's Boots seem too clunky to follow in their footsteps. There's a profusion of dialogue but not too many memorable one-liners, and the adult jokes don't bear thinking about. Humpty tells Puss he was traumatized by the friends he made in prison. Let me tell you, it wasn't over a broken bar easy. When Puss is searched by a prison guard and discovered to be carrying catnip, he claims it's for his glaucoma, an obscure reference to patients who used to use marijuana to treat eye conditions. There are also plenty of crossover puns aimed at a much older audience. Parroting Fight Club, Humpty tells Puss, "First rule of Bean Club, you don't talk about Bean Club. Second rule of Bean Club, you don't talk about Bean Club." A broken bar, but there won't be that many juniors familiar with that R-rated production in the seats. And Puss is also something of an alley cat with the ladies, which also won't impress too many parents. Jack and Jill do turn up as redneck versions of Bonnie Clyde, but there just isn't enough slapstick to keep kids interested. The themes of the film are no less confusing. Puss makes his living as a thief, though he's the good kind. "I do not steal from churches, I do not steal from orphans," he tells a bar full of criminals. But there doesn't seem to be any harm in stealing from just about anyone else. Bad people, it seems, are just as misunderstood as this film. Puss pleads with Humpty to show everyone that he's not all that evil after all. "I know you, Humpty. You are better than this. Prove to me that there's still a good egg in you." But let's face it, his actions show that the proof of the omelet is in the eating. Clearly anyone who thinks they'll be able to live how they like and plead innocence is putting all their eggs in a basket without a bottom. The sequel to the successful 2011 Shrek spin-off has finally arrived, and Dan Slevin says it could be another keeper, but maybe not for the very little ones. Photo, Universal. It's been a long time between saucers of milk for Puss in Boots. The first standalone picture to feature the breakout star of the Shrek films hit cinemas in 2011, well-reviewed by myself at the time and then purchased for the home collection, and for reasons best known to DreamWorks Animation, money was left on the table for 11 long years. As a big fan of the original, I was concerned when I saw that the creatives behind it were nowhere to be seen this time around. Often that can indicate that there's a lack of confidence on the part of the production company, a straight-to-video syndrome, but in this case it means a genuine effort to build on the original but not to repeat it. Puss, the best that Antonio Banderas has ever been in my opinion, continues to adventure himself all around the place, getting into and out of trouble with the powers that be and their treasure and their female cats. But there is a shadow starting to fall across him. After a shave too close with a giant Annabelle, a veterinarian explains to Puss that he has used up 8 of his 9 lives. His laughing in the face of danger can't last much longer. A stranger in a bar bests him in combat and wins his sword. Facing the facts of aging, and ashamed of running away after his defeat, Puss retires to a cat's home in the country. He changes his name and tries to forget despite the many humiliations he has put through. He's still a wanted cat, however, and one of the Three Bears gang: Florence Pugh as Goldilocks, Olivia Colman as Mama Bear, Ray Winstone as Papa Bear, and Samson Kayo as Baby Bear. Yes, the cast really is that good. Shows up to cash in on his reward. He is reunited with his mojo and a quest to find a mythical fallen star that can grant wishes. Maybe the star can grant him 9 more lives and save him from this kitty litter purgatory. Unfortunately, He's not the only one after this life-changing plot device. The bear's obviously a evil pie maker Big Jack Horner and the great lost love of Puss's life, Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek Penalt returns. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is another exceptional script that works for not too young kids as well as adults who may or may not be confronting their own deteriorating powers and the concept of a broken bar gulp, a broken bar mortality. The fairy tale gags come thick and fast, verbally and visually. It's rich but not so filling that it fails to satisfy. One aspect that may surprise fans of the first film is that the visual style co-directors Joel Crawford, The Croods, A New Age, and Januel Mercado are responsible is quite different. Instead of the photorealistic fur animation of the earlier film, can one speak of talking animals in terms of a photorealism? This film has a paint-like quality about it, like the stylized pages of a children's book have come to life, but with thrilling movement and powerful gestures. In addition, in considering the recent discussion about James Cameron's use of variable frame rates in the new Avatar film, this is interesting. At different moments the animated frame rate of the film might drop. It's another stylized technique, one that was seen in the superb Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse in 2018. In that film, some versions of the character of Spider-Man would be animated at a different frame rate. A standard is 24 frames per second to indicate that they originated from a different broken bar place. It worked really well thematically as well as visually, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish shows that the technique is valid in other contexts too. Cameron's use of 48 frames per second in Avatar: The Way of Water seems mostly arbitrary, as if he has told the effects people, "I like that shot, stick a bit of HFR on it." Switching between rates within scenes seemingly at random is a broken bar thing, I suppose, but Avatar has so much else going for it there seems little point in quibbling about that. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is rated PG for violence, coarse themes and some scenes that may scare very small children. It is still screening in selected theaters across New Zealand, mostly day sessions. If you can't get to one of those, do seek it out when it comes available on home video. Now that The Ogre's Tale is over, DreamWorks Animation must find a franchise to fill Shrek's shoes, and it's hard to imagine a safer choice than Puss in Boots, featuring a character spun off from the very same series. And yet, however crass the motivation for its existence, Puss' origin story could easily stand on its own, a testament to clever writing on the part of its creative team and an irresistible central performance by Antonio Banderas. The consistently amusing results should appease audiences and shareholders alike as the swashbuckling cat leaves his prints all over the fall box office. Over the years, critics have carefully scrutinized Disney's adaptations of beloved fairy tales, often picking apart the slightest variation from Hans Christian Andersen, the Brothers Grimm, et al. When DreamWorks gets its paws on such material, however, we've come to expect irreverence and revisionism, and Puss in Boots is no different, abandoning any connection to Charles Perrault's 17th century fable, whose ogre outwitting twist explains what Puss was doing in Shrek 2 to begin with, in favor of a cheeky, Zorro-like lark. Here we learn that Puss, voiced by Banderas, parlaying his thick Spanish accent into a seductive purr, was an orphan turned outlaw by a misunderstanding from his past. Once the town hero, having earned his boots and the citizens' respect after saving an old woman from a raging bull, Puss was later chased out of town for his involvement in a local bank robbery. The true culprit was Humpty Dumpty, Zach Galifianakis, still grumpy after all these years for serving prison time while Puss chased his own tails. A free cat. Still angry with one another, the former accomplices nevertheless agreed to team up once again, scheming to steal 3 magic beans from Jack and Jill, 2 hulking and hilariously surly goons voiced by Billy Bob Thornton and Amy Sedaris, then climb the beanstalk to a castle in the clouds, where they can nab the golden goose and repay their debts back home. For Puss, the deciding factor is getting to work with a cat burglar named Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, who steals his heart by outmaneuvering him in the field, as well as on the dance floor. So begins an epic quest that somehow manages to thrill without ever taking itself seriously, at least for the first hour or so. Not unlike the original Shrek, which put a modern twist on centuries-old folk stories, Puss in Boots plays fast and loose with familiar fairy tale ingredients, to the extent that the Godzilla-like attack by a giant mother goose that comprises the tune's third act doesn't seem entirely out of place in light of all the zaniness that has come before. Screenwriter Tom Wheeler, working from a story concocted by Brian Lynch, Will Davis and himself, paves over the more egregious leaps in logic by laying the foundation early, so a gag in which Humpty Dumpty's horse-drawn coach suddenly takes to the skies can be explained by an earlier scene where the young egg is seen experimenting with flying contraptions. Overall, the writing team seems to have learned a lesson from DreamWorks' Shark Tale, which drowned amid an abundance of frivolous fish puns with Puss in Boots, though cat jokes abound, as do a predictable number of adult-targeted in-jokes. They never overwhelm the central story. Still, much of the character's charm traces back to the fact that his feline tendencies come out at the most inopportune times. With Puss, the situation has always been that no one would expect such an overconfident Latin lover personality in an otherwise harmless-looking ginger tomcat, and nearly every amusing detail in the character's feature-length outing derives from that mismatch. Director Chris Miller, Shrek III, arguably applies the same strategy to Humpty Dumpty, whose petulant voice and creepy egg face design run counter to whatever expectations odds may have about the nursery rhyme victim. Certainly they wouldn't imagine him as the conniving mastermind capable of hatching a plot as elaborate as this, and yet his true motives merely serve to complicate an otherwise elegant adventure. As is often the case with DreamWorks tunes, things spiral out of control toward the end, as if the creator's confidence in storytelling were shaken by the mistaken assumption that odds demand spectacle. Fortunately, they have the good sense to leave out the rest of the Shrek ensemble, including the ogre himself. Even so, Puss in Boots feels a lot longer than its 90-minute runtime and would have done just fine without its over-the-top finale. Besides, Miller and his team have supplied no shortage of spectacle along the way, using stereoscopic 3D to whisk audiences through gorgeously rendered spaces. Puss' initial pursuit of Kitty across the town balconies and roofs is a virtuoso use of the technique, as are later sequences, including the character's dynamic canyon chase and beanstalk ride. Miller also juices the storytelling with occasional split-screen effects, lending still more style and self-aware humor to the mix. DreamWorks Animation has found a new sport, outperforming far more costly and heavily promoted Disney movies. As a result, the latest entry, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, PIB 2 for the duration of this review, is better, livelier, and far more creative than the tedious and disappointing Disney opus Strange World. One might think this unlikely, considering that the titular character was born from the mediocre Shrek franchise. Still, the charismatic cat has also blown Strange World away at the box office. DreamWorks is simply playing at a different game. I will begin by discussing the animation method, which will soon become increasingly common. Much of PIB 2 is animated in a 2.5D stylized process, which straddles the line between 2 and 3D. 2.5D has evolved from the video game industry and is finding a broader footprint in animated films. The revolutionary Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse is a representative showpiece. As a simple explanation, 3D objects, or characters, can be projected into 2D environments. Backgrounds and characters can thus be animated differently in the same scene. PIB 2 can therefore feature a stylized storybook background and have fully 3D characters in the same space. In addition, PIB 2 uses 2.5D with other visual tricks, such as dropping frames or slowing, speeding the FPS to produce a choppy, surreal effect. The story is a variation of the 1966 Sergio Leone film The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The film opens with Puss saving his city from a giant ogre. Though triumphant, he is killed when a colossal bell falls on him. Puss awakens only to be told by a doctor that 8 of his 9 lives have now been extinguished. Puss laughs it off until death, personified as a hooded wolf, comes looking for life. Number 9. As punishment for wasting the other lives so frivolously, a terrified Puss seeks asylum in the home of the village cat lady Mama Luna. Puss is unwillingly befriended by an adoring chihuahua who has disguised himself as a cat. Puss' hideaway is soon discovered by his old foes Goldilocks and the Three Bears crime family. In the ensuing melee, Puss learns of a wishing star that fell to Earth. The map to the star will soon be the possession of Big Jack Horner, a vengeful baker with a collection of magical artifacts. Puss renounces his forced retirement and sets off after the map, which can restore all of his lost lives with a single wish. Against his wishes, Perito the Chihuahua tags along. Puss is unexpectedly confronted by Kitty Softpaws, his, sometimes, paramour from the original film. She is not in a friendly mood due to some past incident between them. Puss risks his last life to swipe the map, and, without spoilers, the meat of the movie consists of 3 competing teams fighting over possession of the map en route to the wishing star: Puss, Kitty and Perito, Goldilocks and the Three Bears crime family, and Big Jack Horner and his cadre of ninja bakers. Everyone involved has a different, desperate wish. Death is also on the trail, stalking Puss with relentless purpose. The story, of course, takes unexpected turns and reversals and is embellished by some imaginative ideas. The wishing star map is an organic construct. Whoever holds receives and challenges. The landscape literally transforms when the map changes hands. Puss' 8 previous lives confront him in their cave of lost souls, where death catches up to him. A later battle with the wolf is stunningly done using 2.5D stylized animation. There are a few cameos from Shrek features past. My only quibble is the use of the all-too common spectacle of the villain blowing up to enormous size and seemingly unstoppable power for the final showdown, a trope I have seen in no less than 5 films in the past 2 years. Summing up, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is an outstanding entry in the Shrek franchise, arguably the best of them. In place of tired-in jokes about popular culture and bodily functions is a rollicking action-adventure flick with a darker subtext about mortality and how a life may best be spent, regardless of whatever follies experienced along the way. Make the last wish count.